It wasn't just a door, it seemed alive, humming with something old and wrong, as if it was waiting for me to make a mistake. I swear my reflection was smiling at me, although I wasn't smiling. The shadows in my house don't just follow the light, they watch me. I thought I was running away from my past, but the more I listened to the whispers, the more I realized that I've been running toward it all along. Now that you're interested in this story, let me tell it from the beginning. The House and the Basement. Part 1. Title: I found a hidden basement in my new house, and now I can't sleep. Hey, everyone. This is my first post here, so forgive me if it's a little long. I just need to get this out, and honestly, I'm hoping someone can tell me I'm overreacting. So, a few weeks ago, I moved into this old house in a small rural town. It's the kind of place you'd see in a creepy movie, Victorian style, 2 stories, big front porch, and a backyard that stretches out into a line of trees. I got it for a steal at an auction after it sat abandoned for decades. It's definitely a fixer-upper, but I figured it was the perfect place to start fresh after, well, some personal stuff. The first few days were fine. The house creaked a little more than I expected, and there's this smell in the air, kind of like damp earth, but I chalked it up to old wood and bad ventilation. Nothing a little work couldn't fix. But a few nights ago, I noticed something weird. The hallway near the kitchen always feels colder than the rest of the house. At first, I thought it was a draft, but the chill is different. It's sharp, like stepping into a walk-in freezer. Yesterday, I decided to figure out where it was coming from. I pulled up a loose floorboard, thinking I'd find some broken ductwork or maybe a gap leading to the crawl space. Instead, I found a hatch. It was old, thick, warped wood with rusted iron handles. It didn't match the rest of the house at all, like it was added much later. I thought it might be some kind of storage, maybe an old root cellar, so I pried it open. There was a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. I grabbed a flashlight and went down to take a look. The basement wasn't what I expected. The walls weren't made of brick or concrete like you'd think. They were rough stone, almost like a cave, and the air down there was thick, humid, with this faint metallic smell. It didn't feel like a normal basement. The flashlight beam caught something at the far end of the room. At first, I thought it was just a big cabinet or some old piece of furniture, but as I got closer, I realized it was a door. It was massive, almost reaching the ceiling, and it looked ancient. The wood was dark and cracked, with deep gouges running across it, like something had clawed at it. The hinges were rusted, and the handle looked like iron, twisted into this weird, almost organic shape. The thing that really got me, though, were the carvings. Symbols I didn't recognize were scratched all over the door, and near the top, someone had scrawled a warning in big, uneven letters. Do not open. My first thought was, what the hell is this doing here? I've seen my fair share of weird stuff, but this felt wrong. It was like the air got heavier the closer I got to it. I stared at that door for what felt like forever. Something about it made my skin crawl. I haven't opened it yet. Part of me wants to know what's behind it, but another part of me is screaming not to touch it. It's just a door, right? Probably some old storage room or cellar. But the way those scratches looked, and the symbols. I don't know. I can't stop thinking about it. What do you guys think? Should I just leave it alone? Or am I overthinking this? Part 2, The Door Opens. Title: I opened the door in the basement, and I regret it. So, I'm back. Thanks to everyone who commented on my last post. A lot of you said I should leave the door alone, but I didn't. I don't know if it was curiosity or just stubbornness, but after staring at that door for another day, I couldn't stop myself. I kept telling myself it was just some old storage room, nothing more. I even laughed at how dramatic I was being about it. It's just a door, right? So last night, I decided to open it. I brought a crowbar with me because the handle was rusted stiff. The basement felt different this time. The air was heavier, and the metallic smell was stronger, so strong it made me gag. I kept the flashlight steady, and every step down the stairs felt like a bad idea. When I got to the door, I hesitated. Those carvings looked even more ominous in the dim light, and I swear I could feel a vibration coming off the wood, like it was faintly humming. I told myself I was being ridiculous and wedged the crowbar into the edge of the door. It took a few tries, but eventually, the wood creaked, and the door groaned open. The first thing I noticed was the darkness. My flashlight barely cut into it, it was so dense, it felt alive. The air coming from inside was cold and damp, and it carried that same metallic smell, only stronger. I stepped inside, and the floor felt different, almost soft, like dirt that had been packed down and left to rot. The room wasn't big, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, but it was empty, except for one thing. In the center of the room was a stone pedestal, about waist high, with something sitting on top of it. It was a glass jar. The jar was thick, old-fashioned, with warped glass and a rusted metal lid. Inside, there was this thing. It was black and tar-like, swirling slowly, almost lazily, as if it were alive. I don't even know how to describe it. It wasn't a liquid or a solid, it was somewhere in between, like thick smoke trapped in a jar. I stood there, staring at it, feeling this overwhelming sense of dread. My flashlight flickered, and for a second, I thought I saw movement out of the corner of my eye, like something was shifting in the shadows. I should have left it alone. I know that now. But in that moment, I thought, what if this is something valuable? Or important? Maybe it was just some weird artifact the previous owners left behind. So I took it. I carried the jar upstairs and set it on the kitchen counter. I felt a little ridiculous, like I'd just made a big deal over nothing. It was just a jar. That night, I went to bed feeling uneasy, but nothing happened. At least, not until this morning. When I woke up, the jar was sitting on my nightstand. I know what you're thinking, you forgot you brought it upstairs. But I didn't. I left it in the kitchen, I'm positive. I haven't been sleeping well lately, but I'm not that forgetful. The jar was just sitting there, the black stuff inside swirling lazily, almost like it was watching me. And that's not the worst part. The basement door, the hatch I told you about. I had closed it and locked it after coming upstairs last night. This morning, it was wide open. What do I do? Should I call someone? Is this just some elaborate prank? Because if it is, it's not funny. I'll update again if anything else happens. Part 3, The Entity Awakens. Title, The Thing in the Jar is Doing Something to My House. I wasn't sure if I was going to post again, but things have gotten worse. I need to talk to someone about this. Ever since I found that jar, my house has changed. I know how that sounds, but I swear, it's like the place is alive. It started with small things. I'd hear creaks and groans at night, way louder than usual. I figured it was the old wood settling, but then I started hearing footsteps. At first, they were faint, like someone was pacing in another room. Then they got louder, slow, deliberate steps coming from just outside my bedroom door. The first time it happened, I grabbed my flashlight and went to check. Nothing. The hallway was empty. Then there's the shadows. I keep catching movement out of the corner of my eye, like someone's walking past me, but every time I turn my head, there's nothing there. The worst part is the mirrors. I don't know how to explain it, but my reflection doesn't feel right anymore. Sometimes it moves just a little too slowly, like it's lagging behind me. Once, I swear it smiled when I wasn't. And then there are the scratches. Last night, I woke up around 3 a.m. to this horrible sound, like nails on a chalkboard, only sharper, more deliberate. It was coming from my bedroom door. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would explode. I didn't want to open the door, but I had to know what was out there. When I finally worked up the courage, I grabbed my flashlight and swung the door open. The hallway was empty, but the door itself, it had deep, jagged scratches running down the wood, like something with claws had been trying to get in. I barely slept after that. This morning, I checked the rest of the house, and that's when I found it. In the bathroom mirror, someone, or something, had written a word in the condensation. Mine. The weirdest part. The word didn't smudge when I touched it. It was like it had been carved into the glass. And the jar hasn't moved again, but the black stuff inside it is different now. It's swirling faster, almost angrily, like it's alive. Sometimes, if I get too close, I swear I can hear whispers coming from it, faint, almost like they're coming from underwater. But last night was the worst. I woke up to a loud thud, like something heavy had hit the floor. When I opened my eyes, I saw it. There was a shadow at the foot of my bed. It wasn't like the other shadows I've seen. This one was solid, tall, human-shaped, but wrong. Its limbs were too long, and its head was tilted at this unnatural angle, like it was broken. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was stare as it just stood there, watching me. And then it leaned forward, and I swear to God, I saw eyes, two glowing, golden eyes staring right into mine. I don't remember what happened after that. The next thing I knew, it was morning, and I was alone. I don't know what I brought into this house, but I think it's waking up. And I think it's angry. What do I do? I can't keep living like this. Should I try to get rid of the jar? Burn it? Bury it? I don't even know if it'll help. Please, if anyone has any advice, I'll take it. Part 4, Reality Distorts. Title, I don't know what's real anymore. It's getting worse. Way worse. I've been trying to hold it together, but I feel like I'm slipping. Things in this house aren't just strange anymore, they're impossible. It started 2 days ago. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, when I noticed something off. The cabinets were wrong. They were reversed, like someone had taken the entire kitchen and flipped it in a mirror. The handles were on the opposite sides, the shelves were backward, it didn't make any sense. I thought maybe I was imagining it, so I walked out of the kitchen to clear my head. But when I came back, everything was normal again. I tried to tell myself it was just stress, but that wasn't the end of it. Later that night, I went to brush my teeth, and when I looked in the bathroom mirror, I didn't recognize myself. My reflection was me, but it wasn't. The face staring back had this wrongness to it. The smile was too wide, the eyes too bright, like it was mocking me. I turned away for just a second, and when I looked back, it was gone. Just normal. I keep hearing things, too. Not just the footsteps and whispers, those are bad enough, but other sounds. Scraping, like nails being dragged across the walls, and this low, rhythmic tapping that seems to follow me from room to room. Sometimes I hear laughter, quiet, breathy, and coming from nowhere. And the shadows, they're moving more now. It's not just in the corners of my vision anymore. I'll turn on a light, and I'll see them dart across the walls, like they're trying to stay out of sight. The worst part? I think it's following me. I had to get out of the house yesterday. I went to the hardware store to pick up some supplies, new locks, brighter light bulbs, anything that might help. But even outside, I couldn't escape it. In the store's glass door, I saw a shadow standing behind me. It was tall, with those long, broken limbs. I spun around, but there was no one there. And then last night, it spoke to me. I was lying in bed, trying to ignore the noises, when I heard my own voice. It came from the hallway, soft and raspy, but unmistakably mine. It said, "Come back." I didn't leave my room all night. I don't know what's happening to me. I'm starting to question everything, what's real, what isn't. My memories feel jumbled, like pieces are missing. I'll be in the middle of doing something, and then I'll blink, and hours will have passed. And the jar, it's still on the kitchen counter, but it's different now. The black substance inside has stopped swirling. It's just sitting there, completely still, but somehow that feels even worse. I've been avoiding the basement, but I can feel it down there. Whatever I let out, it's waiting for me. Last night, I had a dream, or at least, I think it was a dream. I was standing in the basement, in front of the door. It was open again, and the shadows were pouring out of it like smoke. Something was standing in the doorway, just out of reach of the flashlight's beam. It whispered, "You were always mine." I woke up drenched in sweat, but when I opened my eyes, I wasn't in my bed. I was in the hallway, standing right above the hatch to the basement. I can't keep doing this. I'm losing my grip. I need answers, but I'm terrified of what I'll find. Does anyone know anything about this kind of thing? Curses? Entities? Anything? Please, I just need someone to tell me I'm not crazy. Part 5, The House's Dark History. Title: The history of this house is worse than I thought. I didn't want to go digging into the history of this place. Part of me felt like the less I knew, the better. But after what happened in my last post, waking up standing over the basement, I realized I didn't have a choice. This house isn't just old. It's cursed. I spent the last few days combing through local archives, library records, and even some old conspiracy forums. What I found made my stomach drop. The house was built in the late 1800s by a man named Elias Crane. He was a wealthy recluse who moved to this town under mysterious circumstances, buying up a large plot of land at the edge of the woods. The locals thought he was eccentric, but harmless, until people started disappearing. The first person to go missing was one of Crane's workers, a mason who'd been helping with the basement construction. The official story was that he left town abruptly, but the rumors were much darker. Some people said they heard screams coming from the house late at night. Others claimed they saw strange lights glowing in the windows. More disappearances followed. A maid, a farmhand, even a child from the neighboring property, all vanished without a trace. The town grew suspicious, but when they tried to confront Crane, he denied everything. He claimed the house was being prepared for its purpose, whatever that meant. Then, one night in 1892, Elias Crane disappeared. The story goes that neighbors heard a terrible noise, like metal grinding against stone, coming from the house. When they went to investigate the next morning, they found the front door wide open. Inside, the house was trashed, as if a violent struggle had taken place. Crane was gone, and the only clue left behind was a message scrawled in ash on the floor. "It feeds." After that, the house sat empty for decades. No one dared to live there, not even squatters. Every attempt to sell it fell through, usually after the buyers experienced strange phenomena during their visits. Then, in the 1950s, someone finally moved in, a family of 4. Within a year, the parents were dead, one by apparent suicide, the other from a freak accident. The 2 children were sent to live with relatives, but they both disappeared shortly after. The pattern repeated with every new owner. Tragic deaths, disappearances, and inexplicable madness. The house became a local legend, something kids dared each other to visit on Halloween. But no one stayed for long. Until me. I also found something about the basement door. According to one of the articles, Elias Crane had it specially built to seal something inside. There are rumors that he was involved in some kind of cult, something to do with summoning a guardian to protect his wealth and property. The jar I found matches the descriptions of items the cult supposedly used in their rituals. People called them vessels, objects meant to contain the essence of whatever the cult was trying to summon. I don't think it worked. I think whatever they called into this house broke free. And now it's in here with me. I haven't been able to sleep since I found all of this. Every time I close my eyes, I hear whispers. Not just one voice, many. They're getting louder, angrier, like they're demanding something from me. Last night, I found a journal hidden in the attic. It belonged to one of the house's previous owners, a man named Richard Weaver. His entries are frantic, scribbled like he was trying to get his thoughts down before something terrible happened. He wrote about seeing shadows and hearing voices, just like I have. He wrote about waking up in strange places and feeling like something was inside him, changing him. And in his last entry, he wrote this. The door wasn't meant to keep it in. It was meant to keep us out. Once it's inside, it never leaves. I don't know what to do. The voices are constant now. They follow me everywhere, even outside the house. This thing isn't just haunting me, it's inside my head. Part 6, The Entity's True Nature. Title, It's Not a Ghost. It's something worse. I've spent the past few days piecing everything together, and now I wish I hadn't. The more I learn, the more hopeless this feels. Whatever is in this house, whatever is in me, isn't just a spirit. It's something much worse. The journal I found in the attic has been my guide. Richard Weaver wrote about the same things I've been experiencing, the shadows, the whispers, the way time seems to slip away. But the deeper I read, the more horrifying the entries became. He described how it started small, like a presence lurking in the corners of his mind. Then it grew stronger, feeding on his fear, his doubts, his anger. Weaver believed the entity wasn't haunting the house, it was inside the people who lived here, attaching itself to them like a parasite. And now it's attached to me. I've started noticing gaps in my memory. I'll be doing something normal, like washing dishes or reading, and then I'll blink, and hours will have passed. Sometimes I wake up in strange places, in the hallway, in the basement, once even standing outside in the yard in the middle of the night. And then there's the mirrors. My reflection isn't mine anymore. It watches me. Sometimes it moves when I don't. Sometimes it smiles. The journal also explained what the jar is, or at least, what Weaver believed it was. He called it a vessel. The cult that built this house used these vessels to bind pieces of the entity they summoned. But the bindings were weak. Weaver thought the jar wasn't just holding the entity, it was feeding it, giving it a foothold in this world. When I opened the basement door, I think I let the rest of it out. I've also been researching the symbols carved into the door. They match markings found at other supposed ritual sites across the country. Some believe they're part of a language older than anything we know, used to communicate with things that shouldn't exist. There's one symbol that keeps showing up, a spiral with jagged edges. I've seen it in the journal, in the archives, and now I'm seeing it in my house. Yesterday, I found it scratched into the wood of my kitchen table. This morning, it was on my bedroom ceiling. I think it's a mark. A claim. The journal hinted at a way to stop the entity, but it's not clear. Weaver wrote about a ritual, something that could sever the connection between the vessel and the host. But he also wrote this. If you fail, it takes everything. I've started hearing my own voice again. Not just whispers this time, it's louder, clearer, coming from the shadows. It tells me to come downstairs. Last night, I heard it say, "You were always mine." I don't know if I can do this. The idea of going back into that basement, standing in front of that door again, it makes my stomach turn. But if this ritual is my only chance to stop this thing, then I have to try. I've gathered everything I think I'll need, candles, matches, a knife, and salt. The journal mentioned that salt could disrupt the entity's influence, but Weaver didn't explain how. I'm going down there tonight. If I don't post again, well, you'll know why. Wish me luck. Part 7, The Ritual. Title, I went back to the basement, and I don't think I'm coming back from this. I don't know how to explain what happened last night, but I'll do my best. I don't even know if I'm alive right now, at least, not in the way I used to be. I waited until after midnight. I don't know why, maybe it felt right, like the darkness would make the ritual more effective, or maybe I was just stalling. Either way, at 12:15 a.m., I grabbed the jar, the supplies, and the journal and made my way back to the basement. The hatch was heavier than before, like it was resisting me. When I finally got it open, the air that hit me was worse than ever. It wasn't just damp and metallic, it was decaying. Like something had been rotting down there for centuries. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to stop, but I couldn't. The basement was darker than I remembered. My flashlight barely pierced the blackness, and the shadows on the walls seemed to stretch and twist as I descended the stairs. The closer I got to the door, the heavier the air became, like the room was pressing down on me. And then I heard it. A voice, low and guttural, coming from beyond the door. It wasn't just speaking, it was chanting. The same words over and over in a language I couldn't understand. I set up the ritual as quickly as I could, following the instructions from the journal. 4 candles, 1 in each corner of the room. A circle of salt around the pedestal. The jar in the center. The chanting stopped the moment I placed the jar on the pedestal. The silence was deafening. I started the ritual, reciting the words from the journal. My voice shook with every syllable, and I could feel the room changing around me. The shadows grew thicker, the air colder. My flashlight flickered, and for a moment, I thought it would go out entirely. Then the jar began to shake. At first, it was subtle, like a small vibration. But as I kept chanting, it grew more violent. The black substance inside started to swirl faster, slamming against the glass like it was trying to escape. And then the whispers started. They were everywhere, in the walls, in the floor, in my own head. They weren't just voices, they were emotions. Rage. Despair. Hunger. The journal said not to stop chanting, no matter what, so I kept going. But the whispers turned into screams, and the shadows on the walls started to move. They weren't just shapes anymore, they had eyes. Glowing, golden eyes, hundreds of them, all staring at me. And then it stepped out of the door. The entity was massive. Its body was made of the same black, swirling substance as the jar, but it was constantly shifting, never holding a solid form. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted at a broken angle, and those eyes, those horrible, golden eyes, were locked on me. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me, as if it were waiting. I kept chanting, my voice barely audible over the screams. The salt circle started to glow, and the jar began to crack. That's when it lunged. The entity slammed into the salt circle, and for a moment, it was pushed back, screaming in rage. But the glow was fading. The salt wasn't holding. I realized too late that I'd made a mistake. I hadn't sealed the circle properly. The entity broke through, shattering the jar as it came for me. The black substance erupted, surrounding me, crawling up my arms and legs. It was cold, so cold, and it burned at the same time. I fell to the ground, choking, as the entity's voice filled my head. You were always mine. The last thing I remember is those eyes, inches from my face, and a feeling like I was being torn apart from the inside. I woke up this morning in my bed. The house is quiet. Too quiet. I don't think I'm alone anymore. Part 8, The Twist and the Aftermath. Title, It was never about the house. It was always about me. I'm not sure how to start this. I don't even know if I'm still me anymore. When I woke up this morning, the first thing I noticed was the silence. The house felt wrong. The air wasn't heavy like before, and the metallic smell was gone, but it wasn't comforting. It was like the calm before a storm. I got out of bed and tried to piece together what happened last night. My body felt different, heavier, slower, like something was weighing me down. My arms and legs were covered in faint black marks, almost like veins, spreading from where the entity touched me. I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. At first, I thought everything was normal, but then I noticed my reflection wasn't moving. It just stood there, staring at me, smiling. And then it spoke. "You're almost ready." I stumbled back, and the reflection moved with me, mirroring my panic perfectly. Whatever spoke to me wasn't in the mirror, it was in me. I spent the rest of the day trying to make sense of it all. I read through the journal again, desperate for answers, but it only confirmed what I'd feared. The ritual wasn't designed to banish the entity. It was designed to bind it. Not to the house. To me. The journal wasn't written by someone trying to stop the entity. It was written by someone trying to pass it on. And I fell for it. I don't think this thing was ever trapped in the jar. The jar was just bait, something to lure me down into the basement, to make me open the door and perform the ritual. It needed a host, and I gave it exactly what it wanted. The marks on my skin are spreading. The whispers are louder now, not just in my head but all around me. They're telling me things I don't want to hear, things about myself, about my past, about the people I've hurt. They're not lies. That's the worst part. The entity isn't creating these thoughts. It's showing me who I really am. And the more I listen, the more I understand. This was never random. The entity didn't pick me by chance. It's been with me my whole life, watching, waiting. The house was just a tool to get me here, to make me accept it. I think it's been guiding me for years, through every mistake, every failure, every moment of despair. It fed on me long before I ever opened that door. Now it doesn't have to hide anymore. I don't know how much time I have left. I can feel it taking over, piece by piece. My thoughts don't feel like my own anymore, and when I look in the mirror, I don't see myself. I see it. If you're reading this, stay away from the house. Stay away from me. I thought I was running from my past, but it turns out I was running straight into it. This thing, it's not a ghost, or a demon, or anything you can fight. It's a part of me now. And I think it's hungry. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos. Also, leave your comments and criticisms on this video.